I was 23 when my acceptance letter from Cornell University arrived. After years of hard work, my dream was finally coming true. But that dream shattered one Sunday evening in our family living room when I asked my parents about tuition. My mother looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Your sister has a future. You're not worth it." Just then, my sister's phone lit up, full tuition payment confirmed. She smirked at me. "Spending money on you would be a waste." Before you continue watching, let me know where you're watching from, and if you've ever experienced family favoritism. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear the full story. Growing up in suburban Atlanta, my childhood seemed normal on the surface. My father worked as a successful financial advisor, while my mother built her career as a real estate agent. From the outside, we were the perfect American middle-class family with our two-car garage and manicured lawn. But inside those walls, there was always an invisible line drawn between me and my sister Natalie. Natalie was 3 years older than me, and from the beginning, she was the golden child. With her straight-A report cards, tennis trophies, and perfect smile, she embodied everything my parents valued. She was practical ambitious and followed the path they laid out for her without question. I was different. My mind worked in colors, shapes, and possibilities. I loved creating art and designing things, spending hours sketching and later teaching myself digital design programs. My grades weren't bad, mostly B's with occasional A's in subjects that captured my interest, but they weren't Natalie-level perfection. The first time I noticed the difference in how we were treated was on my 8th birthday. Natalie had received a brand new laptop for her birthday 3 months earlier. For mine, I got a set of colored pencils and a sketchbook. When I asked my parents why Natalie got such an expensive gift, my mother simply said, "Natalie needs a computer for her schoolwork. Your drawing is just a hobby." Just a hobby. Those words would follow me throughout my childhood and teenage years. When Natalie won the regional tennis championship at 14, my parents threw her a massive party, inviting extended family and friends to celebrate. When my artwork was selected for a citywide student exhibition the following year, my father merely nodded and said, "That's nice, but don't let it distract you from your real studies." As we got older, the pattern only became more pronounced. For Christmas when I was 16, Natalie received designer clothes and an expensive watch. I got practical items, socks, a winter coat, and school supplies. My mother would always say, "These are things you need anyway, Camilla," as if my wants and dreams weren't worth considering. By junior year of high school, I had started working part-time jobs to save money and gain some independence. I worked weekends at a local coffee shop and summers at a print shop where I first got serious exposure to graphic design. While my friends were going to parties or relaxing during breaks, I was picking up extra shifts partly for the money and partly because home never felt truly comfortable. The summer before senior year, my sister graduated from high school as valedictorian. My parents gifted her a brand new car with a big red bow, just like in the commercials. When I asked if I would get a car for my graduation the following year, my father laughed. "You'd better start saving if you want a car, Camilla. We can't just hand everything to you." But they had just handed a $20,000 vehicle to Natalie. Despite the constant comparisons and dismissals, I found refuge in art and design. My high school art teacher, Mrs. Williams, was the first adult who seemed to truly see my potential. She let me use the computer lab during lunch periods to work on digital art and introduced me to design software that would become my passion. "You have a real eye for this, Camilla," she told me once while reviewing my portfolio. "You could build a career with this talent." For the first time, someone was treating my passion as legitimate. Mrs. Williams helped me research college programs in graphic design and encouraged me to build a portfolio for applications. While my parents pushed me toward practical majors like business or nursing, I secretly worked on applications to design programs. By the time senior year rolled around, I had managed to save almost $5,000 from my various jobs, maintain a 3.7 GPA despite working 20 hours a week, and compile a portfolio I was genuinely proud of. I applied to several schools with strong design programs, but Cornell was my dream. Their design program was prestigious and would open doors that might otherwise remain closed to someone like me. When I told my parents about the applications, my mother sighed. "I don't know why you're wasting time on this art school nonsense. Your sister was already accepted to Yale with a pre-business track by this point in her senior year. It's not art school nonsense, I tried explaining. These are legitimate design programs that lead to real careers. The industry is growing every year. My father waved his hand dismissively. Just make sure you apply to some backup schools with practical majors. We're not going to watch you throw your future away on drawings. Despite their lack of support, I submitted my applications and continued working and studying. And then I waited, hoping that an acceptance letter might finally be enough to make my parents see me. The day my acceptance letter arrived was unseasonably warm for March. I remember the sun streaming through the windows as I checked the mail, not expecting anything important. When I saw the thick envelope from Cornell University, my heart began racing so fast, I had to sit down on the front steps. With shaking hands, I opened it and pulled out the letter. Dear Camila Reyes, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to the College of Architecture, Art and Planning at Cornell University. I screamed so loudly our neighbor's dog started barking. I couldn't believe it. Cornell. The school of my dreams had said yes. Not only had I been accepted, but the letter mentioned my portfolio had impressed the admissions committee. They specifically noted my unique perspective and technical skill. My first call was to my best friend Jessica. We had been inseparable since middle school, and she was the one person who truly understood what this meant to me. Jess, I got in, I screamed when she answered. Her excited shriek matched mine in volume. I knew it! I told you they'd be idiots not to take you. We spent the next hour on the phone planning how I would tell my parents, both of us hopeful that this would be the moment they finally recognized my potential. You should do something special, Jessica suggested. Make it impossible for them to downplay this. Taking her advice, I stopped at the grocery store on the way home and bought ingredients to make my family's favorite meal, my grandmother's recipe for paella. It was something I only made for special occasions, and I figured this certainly qualified. By the time my parents arrived home from work, the house smelled amazing, and the table was set with our good dishes. Natalie was home from college for spring break, so the timing seemed perfect. Everyone would be there for my big announcement. What's all this? My father asked, loosening his tie as he walked into the dining room. I have some news, I said, trying to contain my excitement. I thought we could celebrate over dinner. My mother raised an eyebrow. You didn't wreck the car, did you? That was so typical. Their first assumption was always that I had done something wrong. No, I said firmly. I got accepted to Cornell, the design program I told you about. There was a moment of silence. Then my father nodded slightly. Cornell is a good school. My mother sat down at the table. Is that the one in New York that's going to be expensive? Not congratulations. Not we're proud of you. Their first concern was money, something that had never seemed to be an issue with Natalie's education. Yes, it's in New York, I confirmed, trying to maintain my enthusiasm despite their lukewarm response. The program is one of the best in the country. Natalie walked in, then looking at the table with surprise. What's going on? Your sister got into some art program at Cornell, my mother informed her. It's not just some art program, I corrected. It's one of the top design programs in the country. Graduates get hired by major companies and firms. Well, it's not Yale Business School, my mother replied, serving herself some paella. But I suppose it's nice that you're continuing your education. I felt my excitement deflating like a punctured balloon. I remembered how they had reacted when Natalie got her acceptance letter to Yale 3 years earlier. There had been champagne calls to relatives and a special dinner out at the most expensive restaurant in Atlanta. For my acceptance, I had to cook my own celebration meal that no one seemed to be celebrating. Cornell is an Ivy League school too, I pointed out quietly. My father nodded. Yes, which means it's going to be very expensive. Have you thought about how you're going to pay for this? Design isn't exactly known for scholarships like athletics or academics. Actually, I had received a partial scholarship based on my portfolio, but it only covered about 20% of the tuition. I had been hoping to discuss financial support with them, assuming they had college funds for both daughters. I got a partial scholarship, I told them. And I've been saving from my jobs. I was hoping you might be able to help with the rest. My mother exchanged a look with my father. We'll have to see what's possible. Money is tighter now than it was when Natalie started college. That seemed strange to me. If anything, my parents' careers had advanced in the past few years. My father had been promoted to senior advisor at his firm, and my mother's real estate business was thriving in Atlanta's booming housing market. Natalie chimed in, then speaking around a mouthful of food. My program is really demanding too. Dad and Mom just sent in the deposit for my summer business internship in London. That wasn't cheap. And there it was. Money was apparently available for Natalie's extracurricular opportunities, but when it came to my basic tuition, suddenly finances were tight. The next day, I made an appointment with my high school guidance counselor, Ms. Jenkins, to discuss financial aid options. First of all, congratulations on Cornell, she said warmly when I sat down in her office. That's a tremendous achievement. Her genuine enthusiasm was a balm after my parents' reaction. Thank you, I said. I'm really excited, but I'm worried about the cost. My parents don't seem very willing to help. Ms. Jenkins helped me explore additional scholarship opportunities and explained how student loans worked. It was sobering to realize how much debt I might need to take on, but the alternative was giving up on my dream. Over the next few weeks, I applied for every scholarship I could find with Jessica's help. We spent weekends in the library, hunting down opportunities and writing application essays. I also picked up extra shifts at the coffee shop, though I knew the small increase in savings would barely make a dent in Cornell's tuition. One evening while my parents were out, I went looking for financial documents that might help with scholarship applications. I needed information about my parents' income for some of the need-based aid forms. While searching through my father's home office, I found something unexpected: statements for a 529 college savings plan in Natalie's name with over $70,000. The quarterly statement showed regular contributions since her birth. Curious, I looked further and found another folder with my name on it. Inside was a similar 529 plan that had been opened when I was born, but it showed only minimal initial deposits and no contributions since I was 5 years old. The balance was less than $10,000. They had been saving for Natalie's education her entire life, but had stopped putting money aside for mine after kindergarten. This discovery hit me like a physical blow. The evidence of their favoritism was no longer subjective. It was documented in black and white financial statements. I took photos of the documents for the financial aid applications and put everything back exactly as I had found it. But something had shifted inside me. I was no longer going to accept their excuses without questioning. I deserved answers, and I was going to get them. Sunday dinners were a tradition in our family. No matter what else was happening, we were all expected to be at the table at 6 o'clock sharp. Even Natalie, who had an apartment near her campus, would drive home most Sundays for the meal. On this particular Sunday in late April, the dining room felt suffocating. The formal table settings, the careful conversation about nothing important, the way my parents beamed at everything Natalie said while barely acknowledging my contributions to the conversation. I had spent the week practicing what I would say, rehearsing in front of my bedroom mirror until the words flowed naturally. Now, as my mother served dessert, I knew it was time. I wanted to talk to you both about Cornell. I began, my voice steadier than I felt. Orientation is in August, and I need to make some financial decisions soon. My father nodded, taking a bite of apple pie. Have you considered starting at community college? You could transfer later and save a lot of money. I took a deep breath. I received a prestigious acceptance directly into the program. Transferring later would mean losing my spot and the partial scholarship. I was hoping we could discuss how much you're able to contribute to my tuition. My mother set down her fork. Camilla, we've already told you money is tight right now. I found the college savings accounts, I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face flushed red while my mother suddenly became very interested in rearranging her napkin. You had no right to go through our financial documents, my father finally said. I needed information for financial aid applications, I explained. But that's not the point. The point is, you've been saving for Natalie's education her entire life. You put aside over $70,000 for her. Why did you stop contributing to my college fund when I was 5? My mother glanced at my father before responding. We had to make some difficult financial decisions back then. Your father's company was going through changes. But you started contributing to Natalie's fund again after that rough period, I pointed out. You never restarted mine. Why? My father cleared his throat. Natalie has always shown exceptional academic promise. Her education was a sound investment. The words hit me like a slap. And mine wasn't. Don't twist his words, my mother said sharply. We had to be practical. Natalie had clear career goals from an early age. You've always been unfocused, jumping from one artistic hobby to another. It wasn't a hobby. I insisted, feeling tears threatening. I've been consistent about my passion for design since I was 12 years old. I've worked jobs to save money. I maintained good grades while working 20 hours a week. I built a portfolio strong enough to get accepted to Cornell with a partial scholarship. How is that unfocused? The front door opened and closed. Natalie walked in fashionably late as usual. She was dressed immaculately in designer clothes, her hair perfectly styled. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was horrible, she announced, dropping her bag on a chair and joining us at the table. What did I miss? Camilla is upset about college funding. My mother explained, her tone suggesting I was being unreasonable. Natalie raised an eyebrow. Still going on about that art school? It's not an art school, I said through gritted teeth. It's Cornell University, the same Ivy League designation as your precious Yale. My sister rolled her eyes. But not the same career prospects. I'll be making 6 figures right out of college. What will you be doing? Making logos for pizza shops. I turned back to my parents, ignoring Natalie's jab. I just want to understand. I found the college fund documents. You had funds for both of us, but you only continued contributing to Natalie's. Why? My mother's face hardened. If you must know, we made a choice based on potential return. Your sister has a future. You're not worth it. The room seemed to tilt around me. Had she really just said that? That I wasn't worth it? As if to punctuate her cruel words, Natalie's phone chimed with a notification. She glanced down at it and smiled. Look at that, she said, turning her phone to show our parents. Full tuition payment confirmed for my summer program. Thanks, Dad. Then she turned to me with a smirk. Spending money on you would be a waste. Some people just aren't meant for higher education. I stared at my sister, this person who shared my blood, but seemed to have no compassion for me whatsoever. Then I looked at my father silently, willing him to defend me, to say something, anything that would counter these horrible statements. He said nothing. He simply continued eating his dessert, eyes fixed on his plate. In that moment, years of memories flashed through my mind. The school plays my parents had missed while attending Natalie's tennis matches. The art competitions where I stood alone while other kids had their parents proudly taking photos. The time I made honor roll for the first time and showed my mother the certificate only to have her ask why I didn't have straight A's like Natalie. Is that really what you think of me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That I'm not worth investing in. That I'm a waste. My mother had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but she didn't take back her words. We're just being realistic about your prospects, Camilla. Not everyone is cut out for an expensive education. I stood up slowly, my dessert untouched. Thank you for finally being honest with me, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded when I felt like I was breaking apart inside. I've spent my entire life trying to earn your approval, wondering what I was doing wrong. At least now I know it wasn't anything I did. You just decided I wasn't worth loving the same way you love Natalie. Don't be so dramatic, my mother scoffed. This isn't about love. It's about practical financial decisions. No, I said, looking her directly in the eyes. It's about the fact that you never believed in me. You never even gave me a chance to prove myself. You decided who was valuable and who wasn't before we even had an opportunity to show you who we could be. I walked out of the dining room with as much dignity as I could muster, ignoring my mother calling my name in an irritated tone. Once I reached my bedroom, I closed the door quietly and then collapsed onto my bed, finally allowing the tears to flow freely. All those years of trying to earn their approval, of telling myself that if I just worked a little harder, achieved a little more, they would finally see me. It had all been for nothing. They had decided long ago that I wasn't worth their investment, not just financially, but emotionally as well. As I lay there crying, one thought crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity. I needed to leave. Not just this house, but the entire dynamic that had been slowly crushing my spirit for 23 years. I needed to break free and find out who I could become without the weight of their judgment constantly pressing down on me. With that realization came a strange sense of calm. For the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on my bed making lists, plans, and calculations. By the time the sun rose, I had a clear path forward, one that didn't rely on parents who had never believed in me. I began packing methodically, taking only what I truly needed and could fit into my old Honda Civic, which I had purchased myself with my savings. Clothes, my laptop, hard drive with all my design work, and a few sentimental items made the cut. Everything else would stay behind. While sorting through my closet, I found my old art portfolio from high school, the one Mrs. Williams had helped me put together. I flipped through the pages, seeing the progression of my skills, remembering how much joy creating these pieces had brought me, even when no one else seemed to care. This was who I was. This was what I loved. And I was going to build a life around it with or without my family's support. I called Jessica while folding clothes into a suitcase. "Can I crash at your place for a while?" I asked when she answered. "Of course," she replied without hesitation. What happened? I gave her the condensed version of the previous night's dinner conversation. "Those assholes," she fumed. "Pack your stuff. You can stay as long as you need." Jessica's parents had always been kind to me. They weren't wealthy, but their home was warm and accepting in ways mine never had been. I knew they would welcome me temporarily while I figured out my next steps. Before leaving, I wrote a brief note and left it on my perfectly made bed. "I've decided to make my own way since it's clear I won't have your support. Please don't contact me for a while. I need space to figure things out. Camilla." Short and to the point, just like my mother's cruel assessment of my worth. I took one last look at my childhood bedroom, the space that had been both refuge and prison over the years. Then I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. It was early enough that my parents were still asleep. I loaded my car quietly and drove away from the only home I had ever known, feeling equal parts terrified and liberated. Jessica and her parents welcomed me with open arms. Her mother hugged me tightly when I arrived, and her father helped carry my bags to their basement, which they quickly converted into a temporary bedroom for me. "You stay as long as you need," Mrs. Davis told me, squeezing my hand. "We always have room for you here." That afternoon, Jessica sat with me at their kitchen table as I called the financial aid office at Cornell. "I need to discuss my options," I explained to the counselor who answered. "My family situation has changed and I won't be receiving any financial support from my parents." The woman on the phone was surprisingly helpful. She explained that I could file for independent status based on my circumstances, though it would require documentation and might not be approved before the fall semester. "In the meantime," she suggested, "you should apply for our emergency scholarship fund for students in financial need. Given your acceptance and partial scholarship, you would be a strong candidate." After the call, I immediately began working on the application. Jessica brought me snacks and moral support while I poured my heart into the essay explaining my situation. The next day, I started an intense job search. I applied for positions at every design firm, marketing agency, and print shop in the area. I updated my portfolio website and reached out to contacts from my previous jobs for references. A week of relentless applications led to 3 interviews. The first 2 weren't promising, offering only part-time work with minimal pay. But the third interview at a boutique design studio called Meridian Designs felt different from the moment I walked in. The owner, Amanda Chen, was a woman in her early 40s with streaks of purple in her black hair and an office filled with eclectic design books and art pieces. "Your portfolio has a distinct voice," she told me after reviewing my work. "That's rare in someone so young." For the first time since that devastating dinner, I felt seen. "I need someone who can assist with client projects and handle some basic administrative tasks," Amanda explained. "The pay isn't spectacular to start, but there's room for growth if you prove yourself." I accepted the position on the spot. It wasn't enough to cover Cornell's tuition on its own, but combined with my savings and potentially the emergency scholarship, it might just be enough to make it work. While settling into my new job, I also applied for a weekend position at a local coffee shop to supplement my income. Between the two jobs, I would be working nearly 60 hours a week, but every dollar brought me closer to independence and my dream education. 3 weeks after leaving home, I received an email from Cornell's financial aid office. The Emergency Scholarship Committee had approved my application, offering an additional 30% tuition coverage. Combined with my original scholarship, half of my tuition was now covered. I sat in Jessica's basement staring at the email on my laptop screen and did the math. With my savings, the scholarships, and my income from both jobs, I could make it work. I would have to live frugally, take on some student loans, and work throughout my college years, but I could do this. I replied to accept the scholarship and confirm my enrollment. Then I cried, not from sadness this time, but from a profound sense of accomplishment. I had found a way forward all on my own. That evening, Jessica's family celebrated with me, ordering pizza and raising glasses of soda in a toast to my future. "To Camilla," Jessica's father said warmly, "who reminds us that determination can overcome any obstacle." I looked around at these people who had taken me in without question, who believed in me without conditions, and felt a new definition of family forming in my heart. Family wasn't just about blood relation. It was about who showed up for you when it mattered most. 2 months later, I packed my car again, this time for the drive to Ithaca, New York. The campus of Cornell University was even more beautiful than the pictures, with historic buildings nestled among rolling hills and gorges. As I carried my belongings into my dormitory, I felt none of the sadness or homesickness that seemed to affect many of my new classmates. Instead, I felt only excitement for this new chapter of my life, one that I had made possible through my own efforts. I had done what my parents thought was impossible. I had found a way to attend Cornell without them proving that I was worth investing in, even if I had to be the one to make that investment in myself. My first week at Cornell was a whirlwind of orientation activities, class registrations, and meeting new people. The campus buzzed with energy as students from across the country and around the world converged to begin their academic journeys. I had arranged my schedule carefully to accommodate a part-time job at a campus coffee shop. The position offered fewer hours than I had been working over the summer, but the proximity to my classes made it manageable. Every moment not spent in class or at work was dedicated to studying and design projects. My roommate Taylor was a linguistics major from California, with a laid-back attitude that contrasted with my intense focus. At first, she seemed puzzled by my rigid schedule and reluctance to join social activities. "You know college is supposed to be fun too, right?" she asked one evening as I declined another invitation to a dorm gathering. "I'm here on scholarships I can't afford to lose," I explained, "and I'm working to cover the rest of my tuition." When Taylor learned about my situation, her perspective shifted. Instead of trying to pull me away from my work, she began bringing me coffee during late-night study sessions and defending my quiet space from noisy hallmates. The design program was even more challenging and rewarding than I had anticipated. My professors pushed us beyond technical skills to think conceptually about design problems. For someone who had been creating art in isolation for years with little feedback, this environment was transformative. Professor Martinez, who taught our foundation design course, became a particular influence. A former creative director at a major advertising agency, he brought real-world perspectives to our theoretical studies. "Design isn't just about making things look good," he often said. "It's about solving problems visually." During a project review in my third week, Professor Martinez pulled me aside after class. "Your work shows a unique perspective, Camila," he noted, reviewing my project on sustainable packaging design. "But I sense you're holding back somehow. There's a tension in your execution that suggests you're not fully expressing your vision." His observation startled me. No one had ever looked that closely at my work before, let alone seen beyond the surface to the emotions behind it. "I guess I'm used to playing it safe," I admitted. "Making things that won't be criticized." He nodded thoughtfully. "The greatest designers take risks. They expose something of themselves in their work. That vulnerability is what connects with people. His words stayed with me, triggering reflections on how my family dynamic had shaped my creative approach. I had spent years trying to make art that might finally earn my parents' approval, unconsciously limiting my true expression in the process. For our next project, I decided to push beyond those self-imposed boundaries. The assignment was to create a visual identity for a fictional company. While most students chose safe commercial concepts, I developed branding for a youth center focused on helping teens find their creative voices, despite family or social pressures. The color palette was bold and unapologetic, the typography dynamic and slightly rebellious. In my presentation, I spoke openly about how personal experience had informed my design choices. When I finished, the classroom was quiet for a moment before Professor Martinez smiled. "That," he said, "is what happens when you design from an authentic place." The project received the highest grade in the class and was selected for display in the department showcase. It was the first time my work had been publicly recognized in such a way, and the validation was intoxicating. As weeks turned into months, I found myself building a new community among fellow design students. We would gather in the studio late at night, sharing ideas, critiquing each other's work, and occasionally ordering pizza when deadlines loomed. These friendships felt different from any I had experienced before. These people valued the parts of me that had always been dismissed at home. They saw my creativity as an asset rather than a liability, my attention to detail as dedication rather than obsession. Occasionally, I would receive text messages from Natalie about family gatherings or holidays. "Mom wants to know if you're coming home for Thanksgiving," she wrote in early November. I didn't respond. The wound was still too fresh, the memory of my mother's words too painful. Instead, I accepted Jessica's invitation to join her family for the holiday. My parents made attempts to contact me directly as well. Emails from my father asking about my classes, voicemails from my mother that started with concern but inevitably shifted to criticism about my immature disappearing act. I maintained my distance, focusing instead on building my new life. Each completed assignment, each paycheck, each new friendship was another brick in the foundation of my independence. Christmas approached, and with it came more pressure to reconnect with my family. I held firm, spending the break with Jessica's family instead. Mrs. Davis taught me to make her famous cinnamon rolls, and Mr. Davis took us both ice skating. It wasn't perfect or glamorous, but it was warm and accepting. When I returned to campus for spring semester, I felt stronger and more centered than before. The design program intensified, with projects becoming more complex and deadlines more demanding. I thrived under the pressure, finding that my years of balancing work and school had prepared me well for the challenge. Sophomore year brought an unexpected opportunity when Professor Martinez nominated me for a prestigious summer internship with a design firm in New York City. The position was competitive, with students from top programs across the country vying for just 3 spots. "They're looking for fresh perspectives," Professor Martinez explained. "Your work stands out because it has something to say." I spent weeks refining my portfolio and preparing for the interview, all while maintaining my regular coursework and part-time job. The effort paid off when I received the acceptance email in March. The internship would provide housing and a stipend, alleviating my financial pressure for the summer months and adding valuable experience to my resume. It felt like vindication, proof that I was on the right path despite my parents' lack of faith. As my confidence in my abilities grew, so did my personal style and voice as a designer. I began developing a signature approach that combined clean, functional elements with unexpected touches of warmth and humanity. My work became recognizable among my peers, who would sometimes joke, "That's definitely a Camila Reyes design." Junior year brought new challenges when the campus coffee shop where I worked reduced their staff due to budget cuts. Suddenly, my carefully balanced financial plan was in jeopardy. I spent a week panicking, applying for other campus jobs, only to find most positions already filled. The solution came from an unexpected direction. A classmate mentioned that his brother ran a small business and needed help with social media graphics and marketing materials. The work was freelance and could be done remotely on my own schedule. I took the opportunity and quickly found that my design skills translated well to this type of work. Within a month, I had secured 2 additional freelance clients through referrals. The income was inconsistent, but eventually averaged out to more than I had been making at the coffee shop. This accidental foray into freelancing opened a new possible career path I hadn't considered before. While I had always envisioned working for a design agency after graduation, I was discovering the freedom and variety that came with being my own boss. By the time senior year arrived, I had built a small but growing client base, established a professional reputation within the department, and maintained my scholarships through consistent academic excellence. The scared, hurt girl who had fled her parents' house 3 years earlier had transformed into a confident young professional with clear goals and the skills to achieve them. The culmination of my time at Cornell came when my senior thesis project, a comprehensive rebranding campaign for a fictional, sustainable fashion company, was selected to represent the university at a national design competition. The project took first place, earning recognition from industry professionals and leading to several job offers for after graduation. One evening, while preparing for a major industry networking event in New York City, I received an unexpected text from Jessica. "Heads up, saw Natalie at the mall today. She mentioned she's interning at Burton Media in NYC this month. That's near your event, right? Thought you should know." I stared at the message, feeling a complex mix of emotions. After nearly 4 years of minimal contact, the possibility of running into my sister in a professional context felt jarring. I briefly considered skipping the event before dismissing the idea as ridiculous. I had earned my place there. I wouldn't let old family dynamics deny me this opportunity. I thanked Jessica for the warning and continued preparing for the event, choosing a sleek black dress and the silver earrings that had been a graduation gift from Professor Martinez. Whatever happened, I would face it with the strength and confidence I had built for myself. The industry event was held in a sleek gallery space in Manhattan's Chelsea neighborhood, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Design professionals from major companies mingled with recent graduates and established talents, all connected by a shared passion for visual communication. I moved through the crowd confidently, portfolio tablet in hand, engaging in conversations about current design trends and sharing my thesis work with interested parties. Several people recognized my name from the national competition, and a representative from a prestigious Seattle-based design firm expressed interest in scheduling a formal interview. I was in the middle of an animated discussion about user experience design when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Camila, is that you?" I turned to find Natalie standing there, looking both surprised and uncomfortable. She was dressed impeccably as always, but there was something different about her. The confident, somewhat arrogant posture I remembered had been replaced by a more hesitant stance. "Hello, Natalie," I said neutrally, excusing myself from the previous conversation. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said, clutching her drink nervously. "I could say the same. This is a design event." She glanced around. "The company I'm interning with was invited. They design financial software interfaces." There was an awkward pause before she added, "You look good, professional." The compliment, small as it was, felt strange coming from the sister who had once smirked that spending money on my education would be a waste. "Thank you," I replied simply. Another uncomfortable silence stretched between us before Natalie spoke again. "Can we talk somewhere quieter just for a minute?" "I've been following your work," she admitted once we were alone. "The competition you won was featured in a business journal. Dad saw it and showed everyone." This revelation surprised me. Why would Dad care about a design competition? Natalie looked down at her drink. "Things have changed since you left. Dad's firm went through a restructuring. He lost his senior position. Mom's real estate business took a hit during the market downturn too." I processed this information, trying not to feel any satisfaction at their struggles. "I'm sorry to hear that. But what does this have to do with me?" "You proved them wrong," Natalie said quietly. "You did exactly what they said you couldn't do, without their help." Coming from the golden child who had benefited from their favoritism her entire life, these words carried unexpected weight. "Are you still at Yale?" I asked, changing the subject. A flash of something like shame crossed Natalie's face. I graduated, but she took a deep breath. I hated every minute of business school. I was good at it because I had to be, not because I wanted to be. Now I'm working at a firm that Dad's connections got me into, and I'm miserable. For the first time, I looked at my sister and saw not the favored child who had everything handed to her, but someone who had been trapped by our parents' expectations in a different way than I had been. What would you rather be doing? I asked. Honestly, she gave a small, sad laugh. I always wanted to study languages. I'm good at them. But Dad said there was no money in that. So here I am analyzing financial data and hating every minute of it. I felt a complicated mix of empathy and vindication. It's not too late to change paths. Easy for you to say, she replied. You've built something real. I just followed the script they wrote for me, and now I have nothing that's truly mine. She paused, then added in a lower voice, I was jealous of you, even when we were kids. Jealous of me. The idea seemed absurd. You had everything. Their love, their support, their money. I had their expectations, she corrected. You had freedom. You found something you genuinely love and pursued it despite everything. I never had the courage to do that. Before I could respond, Natalie continued. I need to tell you something else. Mom and Dad, their business troubles aren't just bad luck. Dad made some risky investments that didn't pan out. They've been struggling financially for a while now. This explained the money is tight excuse they had given me, though not why they had continued funding Natalie's education and internships while claiming poverty to me. Why are you telling me this? Natalie met my eyes directly for the first time. Because I want you to know that when they see you now succeeding on your own, it's not just shame they feel. It's regret. They made the wrong bet, Camilla. They invested everything in me, and it turns out you were the one with the real potential all along. Her words should have felt satisfying, but instead they left me feeling hollow. I hadn't wanted to win some competition with my sister. I had just wanted parents who believed in me as much as they believed in her. I'm sorry, Natalie said suddenly. For that day at dinner. For what Mom said and what I said. It was cruel and you didn't deserve it. The apology was unexpected and imperfect, but it seemed genuine. I nodded, acknowledging it without fully accepting it yet. Some wounds took longer to heal than others. I should get back, I said, gesturing toward the main event. I have a few more people I need to speak with. Natalie handed me a business card. If you ever want to talk, about anything, even just to catch up. I took the card and slipped it into my clutch without promising anything. As I walked away, I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. The conversation hadn't resolved everything, but it had shifted something inside me. The anger and hurt were still there, but they no longer defined me. 2 weeks later, as graduation approached, I received an email from my father. The subject line was simple. Congratulations. The message inside was brief. Camila. Your mother and I would like to attend your graduation ceremony if you're willing to have us there. We understand if you're not ready for that. Either way, we are proud of what you've accomplished. Dad. I read the email multiple times, searching for the manipulation or guilt trip that had been hallmarks of their communication in the past. Finding none, I felt uncertain how to respond. I discussed it with Jessica over video chat that evening. What do you think they really want? I asked her. Maybe exactly what they said, she suggested. People can change, especially when life humbles them a little. Or maybe they just want to take credit for my success now that I've proven myself, I countered. Jessica considered this. That's possible too. The question is, what do you want? Would having them there ruin your graduation, or would their absence leave you wondering what if? It was a good question. After 4 years of building my life independently, did I want them to witness this milestone? Would their presence validate my achievement or undermine it? After much reflection, I decided to send them tickets to the ceremony with a brief note. You're welcome to attend. I'll be busy with department events before and after, but we could meet for a short lunch the following day if you'd like. Setting this boundary felt important, allowing them to witness my achievement without giving them control over the narrative or my emotions surrounding it. Graduation day arrived with perfect early summer weather. The Cornell campus looked spectacular, historic buildings framed against clear blue skies. As I donned my cap and gown, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Regardless of who was watching, this achievement was mine alone. During the design department's special recognition ceremony, I was highlighted for my competition win and overall academic excellence. As I walked across the stage to receive my honors, I scanned the audience briefly and spotted my parents sitting stiffly in the back row. Our eyes met briefly before I returned my attention to the department chair presenting me with my citation. Their presence registered as a fact, but it didn't define the moment. The true meaning of the day lay in the journey I had undertaken, the obstacles I had overcome, and the person I had become in the process. The next day, we met at a restaurant near campus for lunch. The conversation was stilted at first, filled with safe topics like the campus architecture and the weather. Eventually, my father cleared his throat and addressed the elephant in the room. "Camilla, we owe you an apology," he began. "The way we handled your education was wrong." My mother jumped in quickly. "We were so focused on what we thought success looked like that we couldn't see the potential in your path." Their words sounded rehearsed, as if they had practiced this speech together. I listened without interrupting, neither accepting nor rejecting their apology yet. "When you left," my father continued, "it forced us to examine our behavior. And then, when your work started receiving recognition, we realized how blind we had been." My mother reached across the table as if to take my hand, then seemed to think better of it and withdrew. "We'd like a chance to be part of your life again, to get to know the remarkable young woman you've become." I considered their words carefully before responding. "I appreciate your apology, but I need you to understand something. I didn't succeed to prove you wrong. I succeeded because this is who I always was, even when you couldn't see it." They nodded, my father looking genuinely remorseful, while my mother's expression was harder to read. "I'm not ready for a full relationship right now," I continued honestly. "Too much happened and some wounds take time to heal, but I'm open to small steps, occasional phone calls maybe. We can see where it goes from there." It wasn't the warm reconciliation they might have hoped for, but it was all I could honestly offer. They accepted these terms, and we finished our meal with somewhat lighter conversation about my job prospects and future plans. As we parted outside the restaurant, my father awkwardly offered a handshake, which I accepted. My mother attempted a hug that I partially returned. It was imperfect and uncomfortable, but it was a beginning of sorts. I walked back to my apartment feeling oddly light. I had faced them on my terms as an equal rather than a supplicant seeking approval. Whatever relationship we might rebuild in the future would be based on mutual respect, not the unbalanced dynamic of the past. When I returned to my apartment, I found a package waiting at my door. Inside was a beautiful set of professional design tools and a card signed by Amanda Professor Martinez and all my colleagues from Meridian Designs and the department. "To new beginnings and brilliant designs, we always knew you were worth investing in." I held the card to my chest, overwhelmed by gratitude for this chosen family who had seen my value from the start. While my parents were just beginning to recognize what they had missed, these people had believed in me all along. That night, I received an email confirming a job offer from the Seattle design firm I had connected with at the networking event. The position offered a competitive salary, creative freedom, and the opportunity to work with major clients. It was everything I had worked for, a validation of every late night, every extra shift, every sacrifice. I accepted immediately, ready to begin the next chapter of my journey, 3,000 miles away from the family that had once defined me. Whether they would be part of this new chapter remained to be seen. But either way, I was moving forward, confident in my worth and excited for the future I had created for myself. 3 years passed like a dream. Seattle embraced me with its creative energy, stunning landscapes, and community of like-minded artists and designers. My apartment overlooking Elliott Bay became my sanctuary, filled with books, art supplies, and the quiet confidence that comes from building a life entirely on your own terms. At 27, I had established myself as a rising talent in the design world. My work for major technology companies and sustainable brands had been featured in industry publications. My name was becoming recognized not for being associated with someone else's accomplishments, but for the distinctive visual language I had developed. In my spare time, I had begun working on a passion project that held special meaning. Using my design skills and connections in the industry, I established a small scholarship fund for art students facing family opposition. Each year, it provided financial assistance to one promising student whose family refused to support their creative education. The fund was modest, started with 10% of my annual bonus, and supplemented by donations from colleagues who believed in its mission. But its impact was profound. The first recipient, a talented illustrator whose parents had cut her off financially, sent me a letter that I kept framed on my desk. Knowing someone believes in my vision enough to invest in it has given me the courage to believe in myself. Thank you for seeing what my own family couldn't. Reading those words always brought me back to that Sunday dinner 4 years earlier when my mother had declared me not worth it. The memory had lost some of its sting, transformed from an open wound to a scar that occasionally itched but no longer caused acute pain. My relationship with my parents had evolved into something I could never have predicted. After graduation, we maintained sporadic contact, mostly through occasional emails and brief phone calls on holidays. Then, about a year into my Seattle job, my father had a health scare, a minor heart attack that served as a wake-up call. During his recovery, he reached out more consistently, his messages less formal, and more genuinely interested in my life. My mother followed his lead, though her communications still sometimes carried undertones of the criticism that had characterized our relationship for so many years. I maintained careful boundaries, engaging when it felt healthy and stepping back when old patterns emerged. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, a slow rebuilding based on who we were now rather than the roles we had played in the past. My relationship with Natalie had undergone the most surprising transformation. After our unexpected meeting at the design event, we had begun exchanging occasional texts, which gradually evolved into regular phone calls. She had finally found the courage to leave her hated finance job and return to school for a master's degree in linguistics, pursuing the path she had always wanted. "You inspired me," she told me during one late-night call. "Seeing you build a life on your own terms made me realize I could do it too." It was strange to think that my act of self-preservation had served as a catalyst for her liberation as well. We were building a relationship as adults that bore little resemblance to our childhood dynamic, one based on mutual respect rather than competition. My work had become my primary focus, the place where I channeled my creative energy and found the validation I had once sought from my family. The Seattle firm had promoted me twice, and I now led a team of junior designers, mentoring them with the same encouragement and respect that Professor Martinez had shown me. One project in particular had brought me significant recognition, a complete rebrand for a major technology company transitioning to sustainable practices. The design system I created won several industry awards and led to speaking invitations at design conferences across the country. At one such conference in Chicago, I ran into Amanda, my first boss from Meridian Designs. She had expanded her boutique studio into a respected agency with offices in 3 cities. "I always knew you'd go far," she told me over coffee after my presentation. "You had that rare combination of talent and tenacity." "You were the first person in the industry who took a chance on me," I reminded her. "I wouldn't be here without that opportunity." "You would have found another way," she said confidently. "That's who you are." Her faith in me, even after all these years, reinforced what I had come to understand about myself. My worth had never been dependent on my parents' assessment. It had been inside me all along, waiting for the right conditions to flourish. In December of that year, I received an unexpected invitation from my parents to join them for Christmas at their home in Atlanta. It would be my first time returning since I had packed my bags and left 4 years earlier. After some consideration, I decided to accept, curious to see what it would feel like to enter that space as the person I had become. The house looked smaller than I remembered, the neighborhood less imposing. My parents greeted me with a mixture of eagerness and uncertainty, clearly having prepared carefully for my visit. The guest room was outfitted with new bedding and a small desk where I could work if needed. The most striking change was in the living room. Where once only Natalie's achievements had been displayed, there was now a wall featuring framed copies of magazine articles about my work alongside Natalie's recent academic publication. It was a belated acknowledgement, perhaps more symbolic than substantive, but it represented a shift in perspective that would have seemed impossible years before. "We're proud of both our daughters now," my father said, noticing me studying the display. The words sounded strange coming from him, but his expression was genuine. My mother's adjustment was more complicated. She still occasionally made comments that revealed her fundamental belief that creativity was less valuable than traditional achievement. But she was trying in her own imperfect way to understand the path I had chosen. "Your designs are in stores everywhere now," she remarked during dinner, referencing packaging I had created for a popular sustainable product line. "All my friends have noticed." It was telling that external validation still mattered most to her, but I accepted the comment as the closest thing to approval she could offer. Natalie joined us for Christmas Eve, arriving from her graduate program in Boston. Our reunion was warm, the awkwardness of our complicated past giving way to a new dynamic as two adults finding common ground. "Remember when we used to fight over who got the bigger slice of pie?" she joked as we helped prepare dessert. "I remember never getting the bigger slice," I replied, but with humor rather than bitterness. She laughed and then grew serious. "I'm sorry for how I treated you back then. I was so caught up in being their perfect daughter that I couldn't see what it was doing to you, or to me. We were both just playing the roles they assigned us," I observed, passing her a plate. "You were the golden child. I was the disappointment. Neither of us got to just be ourselves." She nodded. "Well, here's to becoming ourselves, even if it took us longer than it should have." We clinked our wine glasses in a quiet toast to our shared journey of self-discovery. Later that evening, Jessica and her husband joined us for dinner, bringing a warmth and ease to the gathering that might otherwise have been strained. She had been my lifeline during the darkest period of my life, and seeing her interact with my family now as an extension of my chosen family felt like worlds colliding in the best possible way. During a moment alone in the kitchen, she squeezed my arm and whispered, "You okay with all this?" I considered the question seriously. "I'm not looking for their approval anymore," I told her. "That's the difference. I can be here now because their opinion of me doesn't define me. It's just information." She smiled. "Look at you, all grown up and emotionally mature." The visit wasn't perfect. There were moments of tension, old habits that resurfaced, comments that stung. But there were also moments of genuine connection, glimpses of what might be possible if we all continued the work of redefining our relationships. On my last day in Atlanta, I visited my old high school and met with a group of art students. Mrs. Williams, my former art teacher, had invited me to speak about my career path and the realities of working in creative fields. Looking at these teenagers so full of potential and uncertainty, I saw reflections of my younger self. I told them my story not to center my past pain, but to illustrate that the path to finding your place in the world is rarely straight or simple. "The most important thing I've learned," I told them, "is that your value isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. Sometimes the people closest to you will be the last ones to recognize your gifts." A quiet girl in the back row raised her hand. "What if your parents don't support what you want to do?" I saw in her eyes the same fear and longing I had felt at her age, the desperate need for validation from the people who were supposed to love you most. "Find people who do," I told her gently. "Build a circle of support outside your family. And remember that sometimes people change and grow. My parents and I are rebuilding our relationship now, but I had to become strong on my own first." After the talk, Mrs. Williams hugged me tightly. "You have no idea how many students need to hear that message," she said. "Thank you for coming back to share it." On the flight back to Seattle, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. The pain of that Sunday dinner had been transformative, pushing me to break free from patterns that would have limited my growth. In the process of proving my worth to myself, I had built a life richer and more authentic than I could have imagined. The note my parents had left for me at the guest room was tucked into my carry-on bag. It read simply, "We were wrong. You were always worth it. We're sorry it took us so long to see that." I wasn't sure if their belated recognition healed the old wounds completely, but it provided a kind of closure. The little girl who had desperately sought their approval could finally rest. The woman I had become no longer needed it. As the plane descended toward Seattle, I watched the familiar landscape come into view, Mount Rainier standing majestically in the distance, Elliott Bay sparkling in the winter sunlight. This was home now, this city where I had never been someone's disappointing daughter or lesser sibling. Here I was, simply Camilla, designer, mentor, friend, a woman who had discovered her own worth and built a life to honor it. The greatest lesson of my journey wasn't about family betrayal or even personal triumph. It was the understanding that rejection, painful as it is, can sometimes be redirection to where you truly belong. The doors that close, even those slammed shut by the people who should love you most, might be guiding you toward the path that was always meant for you. I thought of the scholarship recipient's letter on my desk and smiled. The circle was complete. By healing my own wounds, I had created a way to help others heal theirs. By finding my worth, I could help others discover theirs. That was a legacy worth building, one design, one life, one story at a time. Have you ever had a moment when rejection turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to you? When someone's lack of faith in you became the fuel for your greatest achievements? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be struggling to find their worth. Remember, sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. Thank you for listening, and remember that you are always worth investing in.